Before we start, I'd also like to introduce Maggie. Maggie is a Durham Region community member with mixed roots from Tyenga, and Ireland. She is a mother, a daughter, and a sister. Maggie has spent her career in the helping field within the Indigenous community. She's a pipe carrier and a traditional hands drummer. I am so glad to welcome Maggie here today. If we can also spotlight her too, please.
Stego Seneguego, Nioron, Yanya, Yanjets, Kanahayaga, Tindanega, Wakanayaten. So that was me just saying that my name is Morning Songbird and that I am Turtle Clan from Tindanega. I live in Ajax, and I'm going to just do a little opening prayer for everybody. And then I'm going to drum a song to kind of open up your event in a good way. So, Mother Earth, we thank you for giving us everything we need. Thank you, deep blue waters around Mother Earth, for you are the force that takes thirst away from all living things. We give thanks to the green grasses that feel so good against our bare feet, for the cool beauty you bring to Mother Earth's floor. Thank you, good foods from Mother Earth, our life sustainers, for making us happy when we are hungry. Fruits and berries, we thank you for your color and sweetness. We thank the good medicine herbs for healing us when we're sick. Thank you to all the animals of the world for keeping our precious forests clean, and all the trees of the world. We're thankful for the shade and warmth you give us. Thank you, all the birds in the world, for singing your beautiful songs for all to enjoy. We give thanks to you, gentle four winds, for bringing clean air for us to breathe from the four directions. Thank you, grandfather, thunder beings, for being rain to help all things grow. Elder brother, sun, we give thanks for shining your light and warming Mother Earth. And thank you, Grandmother Moon, for growing full every month to light the darkness for children in sparkling waters. Spirit protectors of our past and present, we thank you for showing us ways to live in peace and harmony with one another. So I'm going to sing, this is a welcoming song, and it's called Wando Day. Hey, hey, Wando Day, oh, hey, Wando Day. Hey, hey, Wando Day, oh, hey, Wando Day. Hey, Wando Day, oh, hey, Wando Day. welcoming song. We sing that song a lot in ceremony, just kind of welcoming everybody. So that's my contribution to the event tonight. I'm looking forward to hearing everybody.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for that performance and for the prayer that you had given us. I really appreciated it, and it was well done. I want to thank everybody and welcome everybody once again. I know that Nicole had already done it, but I want to thank everybody for attending our first event for the LGBTQ2si celebration. For tonight, we have a great lineup of presenters, and we have some great information that will be shared tonight. So the first person that I would love to invite is Elizabeth Mundeno. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Elizabeth. She will be sharing some poems with us. So Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just such a pleasure to be here and celebrating Black queer folks. So I'm just gonna be reading a few poems today. The first is Beauty and Truth with Alice Walker. A poem crawls down my arm, at first hands shaking. This Black queer radical poet couldn't be because I can't swallow the wording. So scared my voice sits in stomach acid eroding, lower lip curled over, don't die wondering. My mind wandering to imagine lives, forgets to move my legs. She is the one I envision. I am the one that's next. The way I keep coming back. The way I keep coming back, I'm sure a part of me has stayed. At age 12, I walked gaze lowered until my best friend told me not to. And looking back, I want to unfurl my fingers bent on impossibility, my head filled with futures for somebody else and their body. I did the work of becoming and erasing myself as a teenager, building over stories, but the main tenets were unwavering. There is something to moving past wanting to be nothing. There's something to growing out of feeling small. Something sweats through all the layers, bursts and unbuttons out of uniform, not afraid of falling prey to loitering, debt, bad grades, men, parents' disappointment. Not caught in transit between authorities, feeling like property down to my hands. Done misplacing longing with apology, leaving real friends over emails. Perhaps too quick to unstick and try again, too stubborn to turn past my shoulder. When I circle back, I raise the parts of me I've grown there. And my last poem is called Play Anything. I may be lost, but I think it's about time I took out all the tools again, the ones with sticky fingerprints and chew marks, and traded in doubt, an object I rolled around my mouth and didn't intend to swallow, bops up interruption every now and then, again and again. Judgment rubs up, perfumes and stains me, masks but never becomes my skin, all aloof, cool, and too much packaging. Assumption races to an invisible finish line, flails and spoils the ending, thinking it's outrun itself. Anxiety shrinks things to fist size, blinks and takes the view, makes rounds to all my friends, but stays awake unshaken. I don't know. I spent the night unresting all these questions, unpinning all their marks, sentenced a guess to their origins, and played a way to start. Thank you.
I want to now introduce Black and Queer, Chloe Curlew Geddes. I hope I said your name correctly. She will be speaking about Black and Queer, building resiliency in mental health and parenting.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me here. It's always so lovely to share space. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So what we'll be talking about today is essentially how we can offer support to the Black youth in our life that are queer, trans, or gender diverse. So welcome again, everybody. As I stated before, what we'll be talking about today is how families and friends and loved ones can show up and support queer and trans youth in their lives. So welcome again, everybody. As I stated before, what we'll be talking about today is how families and friends and loved ones can show up and support queer and trans youth in their lives. So my name is Chloe. I also do my work as the Ray Queer, a Black and queer holistic health educator and artist. I work a lot in communities and doing workshops and talks just like this, so that we can help bridge gaps within our intersections. For example, the intersection of being Black and queer, or having a loved one that's at that intersection as well. So we're going to start by talking about biases, both conscious and unconscious. So we'll first start off with our definition. So a bias is essentially a preconceived personal judgment or preference towards something or someone that is usually informed by personal feelings rather than fact. So biases are at times harmful because they can certainly be backed by things like prejudices and will certainly affect people's personal, professional, and political areas of life. Meaning that if someone has a personal bias, it won't always be a personal problem, and it most certainly will reflect in the ways that they treat members of their community. So an unconscious bias usually comes from an outside a person's actual conscious awareness. So for example, a social stereotype that they might have heard or been exposed to a lot growing up, or a family prejudice that you don't really understand to be a prejudice because you think it's kind of just normal. Unconscious biases are in that way covert and sometimes actually incompatible with someone's personal values. So for example, somebody might refute racism and not label themselves as such and might actually think that they're quite the opposite. However, their own personal internalized prejudices might actually uphold white supremacy in ways that they might not even be aware of. So it's super important to shed light on the things that we've internalized. Lastly, as I was exemplifying before, an unconscious bias may be buried within someone's normalized attitudes and behaviors, which is why it's sometimes difficult to open up conversations with someone when they're not actually willing to challenge what they think they know. Because a lot of the things that we might think we know or we think that are fact might in fact be harmful. And we need to, as people that are growing and learning, try to adopt a mindset where that's okay. Meaning that if someone has a personal bias, it won't always be a personal problem, and it most certainly will reflect in the ways that they treat members of their community. So an unconscious bias usually comes from an outside a person's actual conscious awareness. So for example, a social stereotype that they might have heard or been exposed to a lot growing up, or a family prejudice that you don't really understand to be a prejudice because you think it's kind of just normal. Unconscious biases are in that way covert and sometimes actually incompatible with someone's personal values. So for example, somebody might refute racism and not label themselves as such and might actually think that they're quite the opposite. However, their own personal internalized prejudices might actually uphold white supremacy in ways that they might not even be aware of. So it's super important to shed light on the things that we've internalized. Lastly, as I was exemplifying before, an unconscious bias may be buried within someone's normalized attitudes and behaviors, which is why it's sometimes difficult to open up conversations with someone when they're not actually willing to challenge what they think they know. Because a lot of the things that we might think we know or we think that are fact might in fact be harmful. And we need to, as people that are growing and learning, try to adopt a mindset where that's okay. So in terms of conscious biases, these are biases that are aware, declarative, violent, and extreme. So these are usually expressed through negative behavior, for example, harassment or exclusion, and it operates within a person's awareness and is something that is consistently informing their day-to-day decision-making in a very real and declarative, aware way. So now I want to do just a little bit of Black History, Queer and Gender Diverse Edition. And so what I've done is a little bit of research on the history of gender diversity by countries, specifically countries in Africa, to exemplify our Black history. So these are what I found. So in the DR Congo, there used to be a group of people, or there still is, I should say, called the Bengala people. These people were animists. So animists are essentially people that believe that spirituality exists in everything, including things that can't talk or are inanimate. So these beliefs actually predated centuries, hundreds and hundreds of years before colonialism. And in these days, shamans in their villages and in their communities would dress up in traditional women's clothing, and they were actually a key part of society. So they actually helped protect the community by solving crimes, kind of like a youthful version of the police. In Uganda, there were the Ankole people, which again were thriving before colonialism. Within these people, they would elect a woman to dress in traditional men's clothing as an oracle to their god Mukasa. In Kenya, Tanzania, there were the Mashoga people, and Mashoga is a Swahili term to describe a range of identities on the gender continuum. This term is also sometimes used to describe gay men. So the Mashoga population also consists of people that were assigned male at birth, who wear traditional clothing that's for both men and women. So the Mashoga people often assume female gender roles within their communities and are very crucial and important in wedding ceremonies. In Madagascar, the Sakalava people would raise some little boys as women, and there were gender fluid populations there, and their people were known as the Sakrata people. So the Sakrata people wore silver in their long hair and would train their voices if they were to make that transition. So their society actually supported their transitions, and they believed it to be very natural. These Sakrata people were very much protected, and they were actually believed to have even supernatural and godly protection against harm from them. So I think it's super important to have these conversations because, unfortunately, a lot of the rhetoric in some Black communities is that to be trans or to exist as a queer person is something that is removed from Blackness, is something that is for white people. But the reality is that there was so much gender and sexual diversity that existed and that was celebrated and normalized. And with colonization came a very violent forcing into the binary that didn't exist before. And so it's always important to remember that this is still a part of our history as well. On that note, I'd love to talk about colonialism and queerphobia and how they intersect. So with colonization came the scramble for Africa, a very tragic historical event, and the normalization of European missionaries and the violent conversion efforts to erase African spirituality, history, and eventually to assimilate to Catholicism and Christianity. So with this erasure came an intolerance of gender and sexual diversity and the forcing of the gender binary, describing or labeling people strictly as male or strictly as female, and that's that, which isn't true. So I want us all to remember that queerphobia and colonialism are inextricably linked to religious extremism. Great. So I'd also love to open up the conversation on rejection, oppression, youth, and mental health. And so when children and youth feel rejected by their families, they begin to suppress the behavior that their family doesn't like, even if this is natural behavior for them. For example, the way they speak, the activities they like or dislike, the way that they want to dress, the things that they take a natural interest in. So this births something called self-oppression, which is essentially a MIDI model of societal oppression, except in a more concentrated personal form, and is something that kind of grows and develops with the child from the moment that they are shamed or the moment that they are taught to change a very natural part of themselves. They then understand that certain parts of themselves are unacceptable, and thus the oppression cycle starts. So under heavy self-shaming and heavy self-oppression, mental health will always become compromised, and just the ability to express oneself and be accepted for oneself is crucial not only to a person's mental health, but is in a very real way suicide prevention for a lot of queer and trans youth. So I put together something called the youth structure of needs, which is, I think, a simple way to approach how to support a child or youth that is queer or trans or gender diverse or existing anywhere within or outside of the continuum. And so the first thing at the very base of the structure of needs is being seen and being protected. So both of those things go hand in hand. So listening and allowing that person to be seen for who they are, listening the first time, believing them the first time. And the accompanying piece of that is protection. So correcting other people, making sure that if you have privilege as a cis person or as a non-queer person, that you are defending and standing up for your queer and trans kin and community members, or your children or your family if these people are a part of your household. Respect over fear mindset. So for some households, it might have been normalized for respect and fear to get conflated. And for some parents, it is necessary for their children to be afraid of them, to be afraid of punishment, to be afraid to act out. And so what I'm proposing instead is shifting over to a respect over fear mindset, whereby mutual respect is explained, first of all, and you can explain mutual respect by laying down what's okay for you and what's not okay for you, aka boundaries, extending those conversations to children and youth, especially letting them know that you care about the things that they actually want. And establishing that respect both ways rather than instead taking a type of dominion over youth and demanding some type of fear. For community members, it kind of goes the same way as well, offering mutual respect rather than speaking from a place of ignorance or fear. Access to autonomy is super important. Of course, letting folks know that you are here for them and that you support them, but also, again, allowing people to be autonomous in a way that looks like letting them be experts of their own story, never assuming that you know more about a person than they know themselves, which sounds pretty baseline, but with the way that queer people, trans people, non-gender conforming people get questioned all the time, it definitely intrudes upon their ability to make decisions for themselves and to define themselves and to identify themselves. So we want to make sure that there's access to autonomy. And lastly, two-way vulnerability, which kind of goes hand in hand with the respect over fear mindset, wherein especially for children and youth, we're offering open channels of communication where they can see you be vulnerable instead of just demanding openness and vulnerability from them. Just a little bit of boundary setting for youth. So this is for anyone that has a youth at home, was a youth, just reminders for ourselves. So boundary setting for youth can look like a few things. So categorizes into needing, asking, and saying. So it can look like them needing to cry, get upset, or express emotion, including anger, without fear of being punished. It might look like them needing to spend more time with their peers, their kin. It may look like them needing more patience or reassurance. So this can look like them needing more patience or reassurance, even if they don't have the language to ask for it. In terms of asking, this can look like them asking to stay home alone or be alone, or interest in being by themselves. This can look like them asking for more privacy or more trust, or to do or try new things that they haven't expressed interest in doing or trying before. Lastly, boundary setting for youth can look like them saying no, even to you, the parent or the caretaker, or it can look like them saying, I don't like this. You can look at them expressing, you're not listening, or simply, I changed my mind, which is still setting a boundary, being able to shift mindsets and ask for what you need if it's different than what you needed before.
Next, I want to present DeAndrew and Levi, and they will be sharing stories and their experiences, the journey to becoming okay to be me. So please welcome DeAndrew, and then we'll have Levi.
So thank you so much for holding this space here for me to be able to tell my story. So as you know, my name is DeAndrew. I am a child and youth worker, and I identify as a transgender man. My journey to get to where I am today was definitely not an easy one. And to be honest, it won't ever get easy. But I've learned that when you find that little voice that you've been missing and pair it with strength, the end result will be so worth it when you are authentically and unapologetically you. On this journey, I've also learned how important visibility is, to see people who look like you and people who you can relate to. And for this reason, I am proud to be sharing a bit of my story here today. I was born here in Canada, but my mom's from Jamaica and my dad is from Trinidad and Tobago. I do not have the story where I can tell you that I always knew I was transgender from a very young age because, well, I didn't. I didn't even know what that term meant. At a very early age, my brothers and I had the race talk, which consisted of how we would be viewed by white folks, how to deal with stereotypes, how to deal with the police, but nothing around gender identity or sexual orientation. So I was just known as a tomboy throughout my neighborhood who played a lot of sports, and I was fine with that. Basketball was my sport. I lived for basketball games. When the weather began to warm up, all the players in my neighborhood would hit the court for back-to-back runs all day long. I was the only girl to hit the court playing with the older boys. 3-point shots, crossover, step back, pull up, swish. The tension was always on me. And I can't lie, I felt nice. No one thought anything about it, not even me. I was just known as the tomboy of the neighborhood. In grade 6, a new boys soccer team formed. There wasn't going to be a girls team initially, but the coach had asked me to try out. He asked me personally to do so, and when I did, I ended up making the team. It felt great to be the only girl to make the team because of my abilities, of course, but what felt even better was feeling like one of the boys. I felt accepted, viewed as a boy, and comfortable with that. But I kept that happiness to myself. In the struggle to understand my identity, sports constantly helped me find some common ground, basketball especially. It was the game I played to escape everything around me. My grade 8 basketball coach was a Black man enriched in Black culture. He knew all his history, he was an activist. I simply just loved the game and wanted to be the very best. Maybe make it to the pros one day. The first girl to make it to the NBA. I was never interested in his long speeches after practice talking about loving the skin you're in or being proud of where you came from. All I was interested was in how to perfect my shot, do a wicked crossover, drive to the basket, and finish with a behind the back layup. But spending all season with him, I couldn't help but start listening to his stories. I began to learn my roots and how our history plays a role in the world around us. I also began researching those feelings I had when it came to my gender and sexuality. Things got a lot more difficult for me in grade 8. We used to have these long phone chain calls where you would call someone and so on until you had all your friends on the phone. One night, I was not added to the call. I didn't even know what was happening. But the following day when I came to school, no one spoke to me. I had no one to play with at recess. I had no one to eat lunch with. It was a lonely day. At the end of the day, I found out that the phone call was about me. Everyone had decided that I was a lesbian and I was someone that they couldn't talk to. It was like they were disgusted. I knew right then and there that whatever feelings, whatever questions I had about who I was, those needed to go away because those thoughts now equaled being hated and alone. High school was confusing as ever. Because of what happened to me in grade 8, I didn't want to be known as a lesbian again. So I dressed as feminine as possible. Prom I was caked up, tight blue dress, silver sparkly heels, and I was so uncomfortable. Looking back on these photos, I wish I could apologize to my younger self for not being more honest with myself. But college was where I was finally able to start breaking free. It was like a whole new world. There were lesbians everywhere and they had friends. I was extremely happy that I was finally able to let loose and be me. I was able to dress the way I wanted in more masculine clothing. I had a girlfriend and I had friends. I came out to my family as a lesbian. It wasn't easy, but they still accepted me and the girl I was seeing at the time. And basketball was still my safe space. I even flourished and made it to the NBA and made it to the All-Star game. I hated being referred to as she and her, and I did not see myself as a female, but I just couldn't figure out why. That's when YouTube and Google became my best friends. I would type in what I was feeling and dove deeper into the term that popped up, transgender. And that was it. I would watch different trans men talk about their experience and their stories, and every time they did, I felt the connection. But I chose not to act on it. What would I tell my family? That I was coming out again? This time as a boy? They had accepted me once, but I was convinced that this would be too much. And they would cut me off, so I stayed quiet once again. After graduation, I wanted to make a difference for young people out there. I thought about everything I had been through and how I wish I had one solid person to guide and support me and someone who I could relate to. That's what I wanted to be to youth going through their own struggles. And so I became a child and youth worker. And I have worked with countless youth who identified as gay, bisexual, transgender, a lot of them searching to find that little voice. And while working with them, many of them found it. But here I was, helping these amazing, brave young people live their lives authentically, and I wasn't. I was still searching for my voice, but I was getting closer to finding it. In 2017, I met my now wife. My career was progressing and things were looking up. I bought a ring and was ready to propose. But I couldn't do that without being honest with her about how I was feeling, that I was not in fact a lesbian, but a transgender man who wanted to start my transition. I was scared. What if I told her and it changed our relationship? Sweating profusely, I worked up the courage to tell her, and I've never forgotten her words. If this is who you are, be you. Do what makes you happy. It was a response I was not expecting, but it was a response that made me feel safe. The following year, we got married. I was nervous about what my family would say, and I wanted them to be there at my wedding, so I held off telling them until afterwards. I ended up writing a letter to my mom, trying my best to explain to her that I was trans. And I ended the letter with, "If you don't ever want to speak to me again, I understand." My family is from the Caribbean and Seventh-day Adventists. I was prepared for them to disown me. But to my surprise, the response shocked me in the most positive way. My brother was the first one to reach out to me, and he said, "As long as you are not hurting yourself or others, be true to yourself." My mom called me crying and asked how could it be possible for her to never speak to her child again. She told me, "You are my child and I love you unconditionally, and nothing will ever change that." And although they still slip up sometimes when it comes to proper pronouns, they give it their all. My family loves me and supports me like nothing changed. They asked questions, they worked on educating themselves, and slowly but surely they grew significantly from their old ways. I kind of like to believe I've wiped homophobia somewhat from my family. I continued my journey by going to therapy, support groups, which helped me deal with a lot of anxiety and depression and heal before starting to medically transition. As my journey continues, I continue to help youth find their voice and pair it with strength to be themselves no matter what. Today, as an adult, I still find myself going back to two of the lessons my grade 8 basketball coach taught me. The first lesson he would talk about was asking us this: how can you be part of the change that you hope to see in the world? And that's a big question. And it can seem overwhelming sometimes with everything going on in the world. For me, I think it starts with understanding who you are, what your own values and morals, goals and aspirations are. This is not easy. And for me, it has been a lifelong journey of research and therapy, patience and determination, finding resources, support systems, and community. But it has been so worth it. As I've made progress in understanding myself, it has helped me to better formulate where I fit into this world and the steps that I can take to do my part in building a more equitable society for the people around me. The second lesson my coach taught us was be curious instead of being judgmental. When you are unsure about something, don't be afraid, don't be judgmental. Be curious. Google is free. Embrace the discomfort of not knowing, because we don't know what we don't know. And every person in this life brings a different experience, a different perspective to the table. Listening to the stories that are different from our own enriches our lives and helps us build empathy, which I believe is a crucial part of meaningful action as we push towards change and equality for our future. When you are having conversations around gender, race, sexuality, etc., remember to approach those conversations with respect. Being open and willing to listen and learn goes a long way in diffusing potential conflicts before it arises and holds space for meaningful dialogue. If you notice someone is different, don't stop talking to them out of nowhere, because being different is beautiful, but it can be hard if you don't have support. So if you notice someone is different, be there for them. Back when everyone stopped talking to me in grade 8, my mom was also very sick, and I turned down basketball scholarships because of that. So be kind. You never know what someone might be going through, and that could make all the difference. Lastly, I want to bring things back to sports. To anyone who thinks that trans kids shouldn't be allowed to play in sports leagues that affirms their gender identity, try to listen and be open to learning instead of shutting down an idea that's different from your own. Sports were so important to me. I'm still here quoting my old basketball coach: community, self-confidence, joy. A brief but beautiful escape from my stresses. Sports gave me all those things, and today they still give kids those things, transgender and cisgender kids alike. Those kids don't choose who they are, but we can choose to be accepting and open to something as simple as letting kids find community, self-confidence, and joy. I'd like to end off with one of my favorite quotes from software engineer Noah Kaplan. Recognize that you don't have all sides to a story or know everything. Be comfortable with the feeling of not understanding or knowing enough yet. Be comfortable changing your mind. Don't let it hold you back. Let it push you to learn more. In a time of so much division, so much uncertainty, this quote gives me comfort. Change may seem far off and even impossible sometimes, but it is possible. It happens all the time. But it takes people understanding who they are and approaching what is different with curiosity, respect, and kindness. And don't give up on finding your little voice and nurturing it so that you are able to be authentically and unapologetically you. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.
Wagwan. So my name is Levi Alexander Love. Pronouns are he and him. And shouts out to everybody who came before me, who was out here just like talking their truth. Chloe, that was probably one of the most educational workshops I've been to, and I'm a whole trans dude. Thank you so much for educating me too. And DeAndre, yo, buddy, I didn't even know your story was like that, man. That touched me. It's so wild because we have basically the exact same coming out story. So that's really funny. I was like, what? Is this guy reading my notes? That's crazy. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen one time and show you Wagwan. Story told by me, a presentation by me. Hi. Sick. What are we gonna discuss anyways? Who I am and stuff, about being trans and Black and queer and all that fun stuff. Stuff that people hate for some reason. Also, side note, it's really stupid to hate people just for being themselves. That's kind of weird. It's a weird flex. We should stop that. Quick terminology, smology lesson. A trans person is a person who doesn't agree with the gender that they were given at birth. A cisgendered person / non-trans person is a person who's like, sure, to the gender they were given at birth. A queer person is a person who isn't straight. And a non-binary person is a person who's like, nah, to either gender, or who's like, yeah, to 2 or more genders. Pronouns go like they, them, he, him, she, her, your name, fam, zir, zire, so on and so forth. There's like a whole list of them. Like my boy was saying earlier, Google's free, you feel me? Okay, but so who am I? History, present, future, and thing. So these phrases here are basically just phrases that were kind of circling around my mind for a while. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I can do this, boy. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying really hard. Why do I feel so weird? Yo, trans, like, where do I sign up? Okay, periods, like, you know what I mean? All these things floating through my mind, you know? And I guess the time that I felt different, I want to say the first time I felt like different or like weird is I want to say 6 years old. 6 years old was like the age whenever I felt like that. I remember there's one day specifically, I don't know how y'all grew up, but I grew up pretty Black. And one of the things my mom instilled in us from when we were youths is to put out our clothes the night before. So my mom had this like girly, you know, whole girly outfit for me to put on and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, I guess. So I put it on. Yo, more times the woman was sleeping in the morning, see? So I went back upstairs. Mandem changed the whole outfit because I was like, absolutely not. And I just didn't know why I didn't vibe with it. You feel me? Like, I just wasn't, it wasn't a vibe. It wasn't a moment for me, you know? It wasn't stunning, you know? And so I went upstairs, changed my clothes, came back downstairs. Buddy, my whole outfit was just drippy in my mind, you know? It was quite literally dripping off my body because like it was my older brother's hand-me-downs, but it was just drippy to me, you know? I was like, oh, this is a moment, you know? So man, them felt super blessed. Went to school, youths them were making fun of me. It wasn't a vibe. It wasn't stunning, but I don't know. I just felt very like in myself, you know what I mean? Like I felt very good. I know people would comment, be like, yo, that girl's like, yo, she's a tomboy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, buddy, like just mind your business, you know? But like more times, like my whole school career was like that. Like I found myself finding pockets of time to like basically like express my gender in different ways. You know what I'm saying? And so one thing you'll learn about gender expression versus gender identity, quick lesson. Gender expression has a lot to do with, gender identity has to do with who you are. You feel me? Like at the core of you, like who you are, what pronouns you go by, all that good jazz, right? Gender expression has a lot to do with how you are. You feel me? So it's who you are versus how you are. So how you take up space in a room, how you, you know what I'm saying? What do you wear? How do you speak? You know what I'm saying? Like how do you carry yourself? myself, you feel me? And how was that in relation to gender? For example, I've seen this boy who is literally like on site, you would see him and his man, and he'd be like, Brethren, that is a straight couple, right? But this guy, he loves to dress like a woman, loves to look like a girl, like loves it, like that's his thing. And I'm like, yo, that's so cool. And it messed with my mind for a while, because I was like, that's so interesting to me. Like, you look like a whole girl, but like he loves that. And like, that's what I'm talking about. Gender expression is very different from gender identity. You know what I'm saying? So it's all about how you feel and how you want to look outside. You get me? It's not, yeah. Sick. So here, I brought these two pictures on for a reason, right? Let me see if I can move this thingy out of the way so I can remember the question. There you go. So what was I going to do about it? You feel me? What was I going to do about how I was feeling? So both pictures look really good, right? Looks like really comforting, looks all that stuff. In my mind, if I stayed a girl, you feel me? It would be pleasing to my family. You feel me? People would be happy. They would be less confused, whatever that even means. And like, we'll touch on that later, but people would be confused, or people would be, wouldn't be confused. They wouldn't be lost. Like, I don't know, like there wouldn't be all these different things, right? They would be comfortable. Therefore, I would be comfortable for what it's worth. But then you have the picture on the right side of the screen where that looks really blissful. You know what I'm saying? Really peaceful. And not many people want to go here. Not many people, like they look at it and they're like, yo, it looks really nice, but maybe I don't want to go here, you know? And in both pictures, if you notice, they have a lonely element to it. You feel me? It's about deciding, do you want to be lonely, like surrounded by people who accept you, or do you want to be like lonely because of the fact that you're being yourself? Because one leads to both of them lead to community, but one leads to a community that recognizes you and loves you for who you are. You see, the fact of the matter is that in life, right, we're all gonna have people that hate us. I have people that hate me notoriously, like they just religiously, like it's their religion, like they're just undying haters, you know? And I have people who love me, you know what I'm saying? People who love me, like love me so much that they would like put me up in their house if I needed it. They would give me money if I needed it. They would be there for me in various forms. They'd be up till 3, 4 in the morning with me if I needed it. People who absolutely love me. And I just want to say that, like, I would rather be loved for all of who I am than loved for who people want me to be. Because like that loneliness, that type of loneliness is a loneliness that leads to death. You know, like whether it's a death inside of you or whether it's a death actually. There are bare trans kids I know who, well, not I know personally, but I heard of that take their life, you feel me? And like, it's because like of that loneliness, that feeling of like, I'm a weirdo and nobody has space for me. You know, there's no way to explore who I am as a person. And for me, man, I remember when I was 15, my mental health started declining and I had mental health running rampant throughout my family. So it just wasn't a vibe. And basically like, I remember sitting on a couch one day and being like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, this is just, I don't want to be here. Like, I remember I went outside standing up, like I used to have a swimming pool in my backyard growing up. And I was like, buddy, I don't want to be here. Like, what would life be like if I wasn't? And it was just like this ongoing things. I should have given a trigger warning. So sorry. If you need a minute, it's cool, but I'm gonna speed right through it. But essentially I was just feeling really depressed and really sad. You know what I mean? And ultimately in my mind, I was like, man, I can't keep feeling it like this. You know what I'm saying? So I remember like 19 years old, 20 years old, you know what I'm saying? Basically like, you know, oh, is that the next slide before I get ahead of myself? Let me see here. Okay. Yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, so that's essentially what that's about. But yeah, anyway, so 19, I'm gonna answer the first question anyways. So 19, 20 years old, I was basically like thinking to myself like, yo, like I was dating this person. And they were like my first like femme presenting partner. Back then they identified as a woman and so did I. So we were like a lesbian couple and thing, right? We were like besties. You know those ones where you're best friends, but you're not really best friends. You just don't want to tell the world you're together. Okay, it was one of those. And it was like, you know, it was like tryouts, I guess, where we were like, I don't know if we're doing this queer thing, but we're totally liking the sex we're having. It's lit. And like, it was a lot, but note to self, be very clear. Going forward in relationships, don't do that tryouts thing. It almost never works out well, and people are not experiments. Okay, great. So yeah, I really wanted to just touch on that. But yeah, circling back, I was 19, 20 years old, and basically like, you know, my shorty was like, you know, we had a big blowout, right, in front of everybody. So everybody found out. So I was like, I guess I'm gay now. So whatever, we just dove right in, you know. I was kind of outed like unintentionally, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I didn't really feel that type of way. I felt a big way because it was embarrassing to fight, but like, I was like, sick, I'm out, you know. I felt like a freedom sense. So, you know, I went through my whole phase of like toxic masculinity, you know what I'm saying? I was really rampant, wasn't a good vibe, wasn't a good look. Highly do not recommend. -1 out of 10 on Yelp. Whole thing, don't do it. Just skip the process, just skip it. Take it from me, just skip it. You're gonna save yourself a whole lot of heartache. And quite frankly, more importantly, a lot of other people a lot of heartache. Navigating masculinity has always been a tricky vibe. It's always been very interesting. You're combating, like Chloe was saying earlier, you know, a lot of external biases. You're combating a lot of things, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to masculinity. And it could be a weird flex to be yourself, but it's a lot better to be that, because at least you know that, you know what I'm saying? And trying to be who other people want you to be doesn't make any sense, because it will automatically disagree with who you are on the inside, because it's not who you are, you know what I'm saying? And do you want to walk around being like a human, like, you know, what's the word? Like a human, like, I guess I'm gonna say like X outer, you know what I'm saying? Where you're just constantly like Xing yourself out of spaces because being yourself wasn't something you gave yourself the option to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, back to that loneliness piece. Like, you know, a lot of us queer people, like, and trans people, like, we stay in the closet because of fear around like that loneliness, you know, but there's like, we're going to be lonely, right? And like, as long as we can bite the nail on the head initially, like, I feel like it will make it easier coming out. Because if we already know we're going to be faced with all this hatred, we already know how it's going to be, right? So now the important thing is about finding community and finding people who will love us and vibe with us, how we are, when we are, you know, why we are. There's a thing that goes on around the Black and just around queer community in general, where we just create new family. We have new brothers and sisters, new siblings, new people around us, new best friends, new partners, you know what I'm saying? New moms and dads, new parents, you know what I'm saying? Like, we have access to that. And I just want, like, queer and trans kids, if there's any in the chat, like, I want you to understand, like, you won't be lonely forever. Like, the people that, you know, you want to love you may not. And that's the harsh reality. But if you hold on to that and just understand that that's just one truth that exists, it's not the whole truth, it's not the entirety of it, I feel like you're gonna be okay. You know what I'm saying? Speaking from another dude that came out, like, I feel like you're gonna be okay. Like, and like my boy was saying earlier, like, family, sometimes they come around, eh? So like, imagine if my boy didn't say anything. Would he be having that happy, you know, happy marriage life picture with all his fams and ting? Probably not, because his family probably wouldn't have even known. And that's kind of wild to me. Like, imagine if you just took the leap and just tried it out, being yourself, you know what I'm saying? And maybe not getting on hormones right away, like, let's chill, like, take your time. But I mean, like, why don't you try it out? Try out new pronouns, try out a new name, see how it lands for you, you know what I mean? So anyways, I'm gonna go dive into the questions now that I asked myself, LOL. So when did I come out and when did I start transitioning? So I came out as trans 2018, June 2018, I came out as trans. I knew I was trans, or had an idea of it, March 2017. So I came across this YouTube video similar to my boy, and I seen this man, and more times I was searching like buku videos of like Black girls being lesbians and ting. And I was like, okay, like, this is a thing, like, Black people do this. Like, cause that was my biggest concern, right? I was like, is this a Black thing? Is being queer, is being trans like a Black thing? Cause I never, like, literally, I think DeAndre is probably maybe the second trans guy I met in real life, maybe or so, in Toronto. Yeah, I think he's like the second dude I met. There was one before him. There was like this Black DJ, and I think he's like, that's super dope. I was like, wow, that's so sick. But yeah, anyways, I was watching this video on YouTube, and I was like, honestly, like, why am I resonating with this? Like, I'm like in my feelings, like, buddy, this man is mad pretty. Like, why am I feeling this way? Like, this man is mad, like, hulky, and he was burning sage. I'm like, oh, you're a spiritual man. Okay, bet. Like, I really felt myself and seen myself in this guy. I was like, yo, this guy is like amazing. Like, I didn't even know who he was, but I was like, I just watched his interview back to back, talking about hormones and, like, you know, building up muscle and going for runs in the trails. And I was like, oh, this is super manly. And I was like, that's lit, you know? So I started transitioning. Well, I met my doctor in May of 2000 and, oh, actually, let me backtrack. So I decided to myself, I said, Levi. Levi's like, And I'm like, if I feel this way from March 2017, if I feel this way in March 2018, I'm going to do something about it. And I'm like, all right, sick. So then March 2018 came around, and I was like, we still feel like a man. Sin. So May came along, and I'm like, okay. So I went to go see my doctor. Her name's Dr. Go. Shout out to Dr. Go. If you need a link, I can post a link in the chatters after, because she's sick with it. You feel me? I'm her very first trans patient, which was very cool. And we kind of went through the whole breakdown together. She goes goes through this whole thing. You got to sign a bunch of forms, all that good stuff. But I'll get to that into the later questions. But yeah, that's when I started transitioning, was July of 2018, which will bring me to 3 years this July. Whoop, 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 whoop. All right, bet. Where can I go to get hormones? The doctors. Do not go on the streets. I'm gonna say that one more time for you. Don't go on the streets. Doing no street hormones, don't do that crap, man. Go to the doctors, because I'm telling you, like, you never know where they're putting in the street stuff. You never know what's happening. It's a weird flex. Like, and I know that Canada is not as progressive as we like to say we are, but we also are as progressive as we like to say we are. So it's very much like a mixed bag. You feel me? Like, you're going to navigate some weird trans stuff, anti-trans stuff, especially as a Black person or like an Indigenous person or a person of color. You are going to navigate that, and it's real. And I think that being queer and trans is the only thing that isn't really a respecter of persons, in the sense of saying that, like, yes, obviously white kids always have it easier, always, bar none. But at the same time, if you're not the type of white that glorifies capitalism, you're also on the chopping block. So it's kind of wild out here. You know what I mean? So more power, more love to you. And there are definitely like a crap load of community resources. Like, maybe not a crap load, that's a stretch, but there are stuff out there, because there are trans dudes that live in Toronto out here. There are trans women that live in Toronto who are Black, Latinx, the whole nine. Like, there are a lot of people who are willing to like be there for you if you want to reach out. So yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that you can research. You can Google stuff. There's a lot of people, especially in the waking era of We Love Black People. Sorry, that came out shady. But anyways, in the waking era of We Love Black People is what I meant. I see now that maybe even in the doctor's offices and so on and so forth, they're gonna start changing their mindset, because they don't want to look like they're not, you know what I mean? So just what I'm trying to say is, like, ride the wave. I know this sounds like really problematic, but like, ride the wave of people like like accepting trans people, like, ride the wave, you know what I'm saying? That's what I did, because when I came out, like, being trans was like just starting to be popular, like, whatever that means. So I rode the wave, and I'm like, so when it dies down and kids are no longer identifying as like 90 different sexualities, I'm like lit, because I'm actually trans. So you're not shocked, you know? Like, it's fine. I know that sounds like really like weird, but but like, that's what I mean. Like, ride the wave, because like, yeah, like, now is like one of the safest times in history to come out and be out. So yeah. Anyways, get hormones from the doctors. Don't play it yourself. 3, what was the process like? The process of transitioning was quite simple for me. For some folks, it may not have been, but essentially you go in, you get blood work done. And when I say blood work, I mean blood work, like a lot, expect a lot of blood taken from you. And that's just because they're trying to establish a baseline. You feel me? They're just trying to establish like where you're at, like what's your liver, you know, what's, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, all this stuff, just trying so that when the changes come, whether negative or positive, the doctor can have something to refer to from before you transition, so that they can know, okay, we got to decrease the dose or we can increase it here. You get me? So that's pretty much why I'm at that. In order to get on to hormones, I have to sign this letter. There is a section that blatantly says you could die. And I'm like, that's crazy. Sign me up. I know that sounds wild, but I was like, I kind of felt dead anyways. I don't know if that felt like, I don't know if that's a crash joke to make, but that's how I deal with my stuff. Sorry. But yeah, anyways, the point is like, that's pretty much what happens. So you sign these letters, you sign these consent forms, you know what you're doing. It can do all these wonderful, like, you know, awful things to you, like whatever, it's true, yeah. But the reality is, whether you're vegan, whether you're keto dieting, whether you eat the worst crap, like whatever, you're still going to die. So might as well be happy while you're here. Might as well live your life loud while you're here. Might as well be exactly who you are while you're alive, because one day you're not going to be. And then it's like, there's this saying that goes, at 8 and at 80 are the 2 times in your life, 2 types of people you have to make proud: your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self. And so for me, the 8-year-old Levi was ready. I was ready to be a whole man. Like, I was ready for life. I was like, at the end of the day, like, I'm cute. Like, I was feeling myself, you know what I'm saying? And then life happened and I had to like distance myself and be like super girly. And now I get to resume where I was at 8. And that's what happened after top surgery. Oh, top surgery, by the way, side note, is a double mastectomy. It could be a bunch of different things dependent on the size of your chest. Prior to the surgery, there's like 50 different surgeries, but we can go through that another time. It's fine. But essentially, I had a double mastectomy because, you know, my chest was large. But yeah, so anyways, that happened. That was cool. And I felt like it restarted my clock. Like, I felt like I was aging mad quickly. But then like this chest thing happened and I was like, like feeling myself, you know, and I felt great. And so like, it's like so important to continue to push for access for trans youth and trans kids and trans adults, trans seniors, whatever, to be themselves and to have spaces, because I'm telling you, like the night and day feels I have within myself. I wake up and I feel great. I feel like there's no more confusion. Remember the confusion I was telling you about earlier? Yeah, like the confusion with other people, I think that has a lot to do with the fact that other people are really interested in their own reality. You feel me? So how we've been conditioned is to see things as man and woman. Shouts out to colonization. So that's kind of how it's been, right? And I feel like colonization really, like, because I guess colonizers couldn't handle diversity, and diversity isn't cute when you're trying to capitalize on people. So they really just shut down certain genders and turned off certain genders and, you know, pushed asunder certain genders and said man and woman. And then had the audacity to say, oh, XY people are going to be men and XX people are going to be women. And that really mashed up a lot of people's minds, because what if you came out with XXXY? What if you came out with XYY? What if you had a different mixture of chromosomes? Are you no longer a man? Are you no longer a woman? Like, what does that even mean? And what if you don't vibe with gender? Like, it just X'd a lot of things out. So the confusion isn't anything to do with you as a trans person. Oh, no. Everything to do with how people want to place their perceptions onto other people. That's how it goes. So they're confused because what you're doing isn't lining up with how they're thinking. So if you and how I'm thinking about you is none of your business, you know, it's not your concern. It shouldn't stop you nor derail you from being the best and the truest version of who you are meant to be. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a weird flex for anybody to be like, let me impose what I'm thinking on another person and make them participate in that, rather than just being like, why don't you just be yourself and allow me to learn who you are? You don't walk into somebody's house talking about, oh, I don't like the decor. Like, is it your house? Like, it makes no sense to me. So for me, the way I see that is like you as a person, like, when you walk in, when somebody walks into your home, treat it the same way. You don't allow people to talk crap about your furniture. Okay, but then don't come over. Like, I don't know what to say. And if you want to kiki with your friends after, that's your business, but you're not going to interfere me. Like, you know what I mean? And on that note, people are going to be feisty. They're going to be rude. But on the same house example, understand that, like, they're not paying the rent there. They're not paying the hydro there. They're not driving the car to there. They don't get to sleep in the nice king size bed. They don't get to do all these things. They don't get to do that. So their opinion warrants null and void because it's not their place. You understand? It's just not their place, quite literally and figuratively. It's just not their place to comment and to, you know, so don't let that stop you. Try not to let that stop you. And everything I say, like, remember, you don't have to do the things I'm saying in this presentation. You don't have to examine yourself. You don't have to do none of that. But like, and the other truth is, what I'm explaining to you is, if you want to be free, the first place to start with freedom is looking within yourself and then dealing with everything else after that, right? Sick. So, which leads me to my fourth point. Why did I decide to transition? Because I'm happy. I am, true story, I'm happy. And I'm excited to be in a place in my life where I just don't care. I don't care about what other people think as intensely anymore. Like, it ruminates in my mind. Yeah, sometimes I hear the things my mom said. Like, my mom's like, I didn't make a man. And I'm like, that's crazy because you were never here. So like, what did you make? Like, you know, make it make sense. It's so crazy to me how people who have 0% of a footprint in my life had the most to say. And I was like, that's wild. Like, I don't know if you're embarrassed because you didn't get to be a part of this journey, because you didn't get to be like a firm part in this part of my life, but like, it's also none of my business and I'm not to care. I have to live. Like, I have to live, you know? And so that's what I chose to do, is to live. And I chose to live for me. And everything else has been moving rather smoothly. And mind you, I've still gone through traumas. They didn't erase anything. So for those of you out there who are thinking, oh, he's trans because he went through trauma and blah, blah, blah. And, you know what I'm saying? Like, for those of you thinking that, like, stop, because the trauma didn't stop because I transitioned. Like, I just feel better. I just feel more complete and more centered while I'm like alive, you know? And so the fifth thing is, who do I become after taking hormones? Good question. similar to my boy, I think it's mad important to be in therapy and to have community around you before you start your transition, so that you can work on all those weird things that you do that are not supposed to be doing. All those like survival techniques that you chose to do because you were needing to survive, but you shouldn't blame yourself for it, by the way. But you don't always, like, you know, inshallah, you'll never have to always survive, right? Eventually you'll begin to live, right? And when you're trying to live, certain things you do while you're surviving, you cannot continue to do while you're living, you feel me? And so now I'm in the living stage of my life where I'm trying to live. And the biggest thing that really helped me curb that toxic masculinity early on was my therapist and my big sister and a bunch of my aunties and just strong Black women in my life who were like, no, like, you're not gonna do that. Like, you're not gonna embarrass me. Like a lot of like Black women just talking to me, you know what I'm saying? You know how Black women get, you feel me? Like, it's just, that's not one of those. Like, we're very much the no BS race. Like, it's very much like, stop right now. And it's not to say you can't make mistakes. Like, obviously, yeah, go for it, right? But like, at some point, it's like you need somebody to lovingly like drape you up and let you know, stop, right? So all those things like that you're participating in before and things like that, like, you know, throughout therapy and so on and so forth, like those things will be pushed away, right? So that's pretty much what that is. And how did I discover I was trans? Through YouTube. That was pretty much what happened. I actually kind of want to touch back on the point 5 real quick again, and just kind of say like, yo, you know, one thing my mentor did, which we're still friends to this day, which is great. She made me write out this letter, like detailing exactly who it was going to be. So I was like, my name's Levi Alexander Love. I have like 4 middle names. So I wrote my whole name out. And I was like, you know, I'm going to be cute. I'm going to have locks. I mean, evidently, probably not, but like maybe, you never know. I'm going to, you know, do this, that, and third. I'm going to have a lot of tattoos, which I started getting. I don't know if you can see, but I started getting some of them. I look at 1, 2, you know? So I was like, things like that. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to be this sweet boy, you know, feminine, but like, you know, still like, you know, grounded in masculinity, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was really just deep diving. Like, I'm a funny man. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a funnier guy. Like, y'all them love me. Like, I was really writing everything out. Like, I was really going through things. Like, I was like, all the genders are sweating over me, you know? And I was just like, really just like writing things out in like deep detail. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to be a dad, you know? Maybe it's to plants. Maybe it's to human beings. Maybe it's Maybelline. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's all that thing, you know? And I was just out here just writing and just writing and just writing until like, I just filled the page. And at the time I was feeling this girl. So I incorporated her. I was like, yeah, she could be my wife. And obviously she's not, because I'm still a single Pringle. But the point is like, at the end of the day, like I felt really good, like being able to write and like, you know, feel myself out. That was awkward. But yeah, like feel myself out and really just like have a field day, like daydreaming about who I'm going to be. And at some point, like it felt like a astral projection type of thing where like, it's like myself projected in like an older version of myself. And I tried to like envision myself as like with a beard and like, you know what I'm saying, with locks. And I was like, yo, you're cute. And I was like, that's crazy. That's wild. And like, for me, the way I see life is like, yo, like, you're a big kid. Like I'm a big kid. Okay. Like I love Toy Story. You best believe I was watching Toy Story 4 in theaters. Absolutely. Like I'm out here watching The Incredibles 2 getting, you know, look, like, well, I wasn't really choked up over that. Like Shrek the 4th kind of messed me up though. But the point is like, at the end of the day, like I'm out here watching Bear Pixar movies. I don't even care. Like I'm here ready to play Legos. Like I'm a big kid because at the end of the day, like, stay young, you feel me? And just to dial down now, right? Digress, that's the word. Like I'm a big kid, you feel me? Like it's really about being a child. Like that's what I really felt like spiritually and energetically after the transition, like after the chest surgery. I really felt myself like re-entering like childlikeness because, you know, 8 years old, flat-chested dude, right? Who was just like trying to pee standing up and super curious about life and like, you know, just like figuring out his sexuality for the first time and like figuring out that I like girls and all this kind of stuff. Like I was really just deeply entrenched in like figuring out life and discovering. And I'm like, yo, I never want to lose my curiosity. Like, you know, like DeAndrew's basketball coach, like I never want to lose that curiosity. Like I never want to lose that hunger, that zest for life, for like trying to figure out who I am. Because I'm telling you, once you start to love yourself and scratch that, once you start to respect yourself, you feel me? Because respect, if you want to reverse engineer that, and if you're having a hard time loving yourself, think about it as respecting yourself. If you respect yourself, You're not gonna let certain things pass. You feel me? You're not gonna let certain things cross you. You know what I'm saying? You're not gonna let certain ways of moving, like, you know what I'm saying, like keep you in a certain spot. If you respect yourself, you'll make sure that like you are getting the food you need, the access to shelter, whatever the case may be, like as best as you can, obviously, because we're not in control of everything. But like if you respect yourself, like that's wagwan. And respect is love. Like it is loving to respect yourself. That is the foundation of self-love. It's less about traveling the world and blah, blah, blah. And it's more about setting boundaries just as much as it's about, you know, going into Brazil and having a good time. You know what I'm saying? Kirks and Tacos and whatever. Like it's all these things in one. Remember how I talked about earlier, how multiple truths can exist in a space? When my auntie said that to me, like it never left my mind because there's no one truth. There's multiplicities. We are a multiplicity of beings within a one vessel. You know, we're I'm a brother, you know what I'm saying? I'm a plant dad, I'm a musician, you know what I'm saying? I love tofu, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm a vegan, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm a photographer. Like there are so many different parts of me that exist in me, right? And just remember that going forward, whenever you burst into any room, remember that you should walk in with all of who you are. And I hope and I pray that you will be able to have access to a bunch of spaces that will allow you to be yourself in totality. Because the reality of the fact is that we're not just born one thing, like we're born with many different things. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to leave you with this thought. If I can try and digress, I'm trying. I want to leave you this one thought, all right? I feel like you're worthy. That's it. Like whatever you're doing in life, like whatever your goals are, whatever your plans are, whatever your vision is, however you want to be, like be that. Because you see, capitalism teaches us monolithicity, whatever, monolithicness, you know, just teaches us that we're a monolith. We're just one thing, you know, but what if we decided to like step outside of capitalism in that sense, right? And understand like, I can still make money being myself. I don't have to perform. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. I can just be myself. Safety is everything. And I hope that, you know, and I think it's important for you to only access safe spaces. But the reality is 9 times out of 10, we're probably not going to be in a safe space sometimes, maybe 7 times out of 10. We're not going to be in a safe space sometimes, you know? There's always give me that one person, you know? And so I'll leave you with this, like, you are worthy of expressing yourself and being all of who you are all the time. And I also want to say that if people will find their way, people who love you and want you around will, you know, rally around you and will be there for you. And you're not alone forever. You may be alone for a little while. And I'm not going to preach you. I'm not going to teach you and preach to you and show you this happy-go-lucky, unrealistic expectation, because the reality of the fact is it is wicked hard, okay, being trans. Like, it's not this easy, let's, you know, kick by the wayside. Like, it's not, but it's a lot easier being alive than dead. I can tell you that right now. It is a lot easier to live today than it was to live when I was 15. It is a lot easier to live without tits and without a period than it is to live with one. Listen, people might not understand you, and that's their business, but you matter. You are worthy. Literally, Einstein said, like, you matter. You take up space. So take that up. Take up the space. And that's me. Thank you.
Right now, we are going to have Olivia and Nicole, sorry, that's going to be asking some questions to our presenters this evening.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, everybody. Sorry, Nicole?
I'm going to go before you for only reason just to say thank you so much for being part of this event, for sharing your story. I was like tearful the entire time, so not to make any why I was tearful, but I think it just really impacted me. It impacted, you know, the clients that I've worked with, and just their stories got riled up as well. And I think this message is something that needed to be told, and I appreciate you coming to this space to do so. So thank you so much. And sorry, Olivia, I just wanted to make sure I said thank you too.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that was really powerful. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your stories, and even those psychoeducation pieces as well. Very informative. Thank you so much. And so there are a couple of questions directed at specific panelists, but there are some in general as well. I think this one would be suited for Chloe because she discussed that piece on self-oppression. So this question asks, even though I've come out as gay, I still feel a sense of self-oppression as I've received poor initial reactions from my family members. How can I overcome this?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you so much for being here. I want to acknowledge that for some people who are queer, working through that piece of internalized shame or internalized anger, hard feelings at our queerness is something that will come up. And unfortunately, in some cases, those feelings might be reinforced or upheld by those that are around us. And so it's hard, when you're in the stew, some stew is going to get on you. I say that all the time. And so if you're around people that have those ideals, it certainly will be a very, very real struggle and a very real effort to put that into practice. But it's super crucial that we can start building that muscles, again, of identifying our family's feelings as their feelings and our feelings as our feelings. And of course, it hurts and it's icky, and there's a lot of uncomfortable feelings when those can't coincide, and when those that we love the most won't show up for us when we need them to the most. But this is where that self-acknowledgement comes in. So it's an amazing testament that you're able to acknowledge and identify how you feel. So snaps for that and snaps for you. And I'm super sorry that there's a lack of support. But again, just as much as we can, making that a practice to honor our feelings above those around us might sound selfish or seem counterproductive, but it is the very first step of self-survival, I think, as a queer person. I hope that helps to answer your question.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that's important. I think that speaks to boundary setting and in a way of differentiating those feelings as well. That's super important. Thank you for that answer, Chloe. Let's see, we've got another question here. Do you feel that the Black community in Toronto / the GTA is supportive to the LGBTQ community? And how can the community become better allies? This one's for anyone that wants to answer, I think.
Sick. I'll answer. The reason why I smiled and almost laughed was I think that's kind of that's like my whole debacle with the Black community is like I just don't understand why. Like it doesn't make me any less Black. Like I'm still very dark skinned, still very Black. Like you know what I'm saying, while being trans at the same time. So what I'll say is this: yes, I do see that there's been a lot of like changes and a lot of like effort on Black folks, and I'm really really proud of us, to be honest, for how we've, especially as Caribbean folks. I'm Caribbean, so I don't know. I can't. That's the part of Blackness I can speak to. How we're really trying. Like for example, my grandma, she was born when she was born. And she's from a country, okay? Like from country Jamaica, okay? Like I'm telling you, like the most, almost like the pinnacle of homophobia, okay? Like just mad country Jamaica, okay? And she decided that she was still gonna love me anyways. And she calls me by my name, she calls me her grandson. It took her a minute to get it together, but I'm really proud of her and I'm really happy. So I'm telling you, if a woman from like 2 generations ago can figure it out, everybody can. You know what I'm saying? Oh, that's my grandma calling. Yeah, grandma, sorry, give me a second. Yes, anyways. At the end of the day, what I want to say to you is, yeah, Black people are getting it together. We are. However, there's still a large amount of us who are not. So let me send to my grandma real quick, but that's all I want to say. Okay.
I agree. And I think, Chloe talked about the impact of colonialism, right? And so when you think about Caribbean culture, there was such a huge, heavy influence on colonial belief systems and whiteness and that privilege. And so I think a lot of those community members started to adopt some of those values, and it separated from what we knew in Africa when before, when you talked about the history. So thank you. I wanted to build on that because one of the things that I see in my practice is many times parents really struggle when their child discloses their sexual or gender identity. And they'll say comments, and Levi mentioned it, right? They say comments like, this is just a phase they're going through. Like, I love my child, but I don't agree with their lifestyle. Like, how do you support parents to And I guess this is for anyone, how would you suggest on how to support parents with this experience so that they can create safer spaces for their children, their youth, their adults?
So for myself, as you were talking, I was just kind of thinking about like my own experiences. When I think about like how do you help parents, it's kind of one of those things where I honestly, when I think about it, I feel like as much as I transitioned, my family had to transition as well. You know what I mean? Like they had to explain to friends that they had that knew me, that this is who I am now, right? And to be honest, it's a process. It's not something that can be rushed. I can't tell you to be like, at the end of the day, they had to work through that on their own. And at the end of the day, it's not our job to make people feel comfortable. At the end of the day, if you feel uncomfortable by my presence, I think you need to work on something within yourself as to why that, because I'm here and existing, being myself, not bothering anybody. Why does that bother you?
I guess I have another question, and I think that follows up with what Levi said. And I remember listening to someone speak about how there's a belief system that, you have mental health issues because you're gay, right? Or because you're queer. And this is like, those two go hand in hand. But I think when you talked about, the experiences that you have within your community that, silence you or reduce your voice and all those other experiences, that can create mental health issues. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Levi. And you talked about like even your own mental health and how, you felt about yourself and life. What kind of tips or strategies can you give for young people who are contemplating suicide? What kind of help turn that mindset for you?
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much. Oh boy. Okay, so I think one of the things that helped was being real with myself. There is no magic potion to get rid of suicide ideations. It's not this, I wake up one day and boom, if I spin around 3 times and like read a couple more scriptures or like, you know what I'm saying? Like look outside into the moon and like, become a werewolf. Like it's not like that. It's one of those where you just have to be honest. Like, yes, I feel like I want to die right now. And once you can admit that, then from there you can be like, okay, like, is this something I actually want to do? Or is this a manifestation of a feeling of deep despair? 9 times out of 10, when people talk about suicide, they're not talking about actually wanting to die. They're talking about wanting to escape the pain. So if you can get yourself to a place where you can cleanly separate the two, that would be at your best bet. Now, folks who are in critical condition, who are like, no, I just want to die, that's it, and they're determined, I would definitely say pick up the phone and call somebody. So call a friend. If the friend isn't picking up, like Kids Help Phone helped me a few times. I have heard some problematic things. So again, like a lot of our system is very hit and miss. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not great. But there are lines out there, and I use them at like 25 or like 24-ish, like that, stuff like that. So like using those help phones like really helped. And like, don't be afraid to like say you need help. Like that was one of the things that saved my life, was just saying I need help right now. Like I'm not feeling okay. Like just admitting that, right? And because the trying to be strong is what leads to the death and stuff. For folks who are, one thing I take with me is this idea of, okay, I'll give it another year. You know what I mean? If things don't change in a year, then X, Y, and Z, I'll implement this plan. So that's what I would call like an active suicide plan. I know that sounds really crazy, but just go with me. So like for me, it worked. So I just imagined, okay, all right, so I got a lot of things to look forward to now. And you have to find something to look forward to. That's kind of the trick here. So you find something to look forward to. And then with that, you kind of be like, all right, I'll give it another year. If at this point I still feel like this, then all right. But then what happened was with me, and it may not happen with you. So like obviously have other plans too. Like not obviously, but like have other plans too. Like don't just go for it. Like just like have several blocks between you and suicide. Like have several things you have to do first before you like get to do it. You know what I mean? Like have those moments where you're like, okay, well, I get to go to my beach with my friends and I can't go if I'm dead. Or I get to go to the convenience store and they had my favorite candy. Like the most mundane thing, just pick something to live for, just anything random. Like I get to listen to my favorite song again, whatever, just something. Because once you start to do that, you'll start to realize, like subconsciously, it will start to teach yourself not to be grateful, but to see that there are other things that also exist while your problem is existing. So it's not just your problem, because that's what happens, right? When we get into these moments, we get into this, oh my God, it's just this right now. Like nothing else is happening. It's just this moment. And it's like, once you realize that, it's like, no, it's this moment, and your boy's gonna call you in a few minutes, and you get to watch your favorite TV show, and your Netflix subscription just renewed, woohoo, like, and your Amazon order just got shipped, like, and there's a bunch of other things that are also happening while your issue's happening. So that's what I would say. I would say have an active suicide prevention plan. If you're someone who constantly struggles with attempts and stuff, you really want to have an active suicide plan. So that looks like, okay, so when you're feeling this way, what do? All right, listen to music. And when that doesn't work, call a friend. And when that doesn't work, go for a walk. And when that doesn't work, call a friend and go for a walk. And when all those things don't work, call for help. Like call the kids' help phone, call the 911, speak to somebody, because somebody's going to care about you. You feel me? Like somebody in this world is going to care about you. I promise you that. You're not, that makes no sense. There are 7 billion people that live here and one of them cares about you. Like I promise you, bar none. They don't need to know your story. They don't need to know where you're from. They don't need to know none of that. They don't even need to know that you're trans or you're queer. They don't care. Like, no, that's not what matters at the moment. What matters is that you are alive tomorrow. So that's what I would say. So hope that helps. Sorry, I'm downtown. Okay.
Wow, thank you. Wow, that was powerful. 7 billion people in the world. Someone's about to love you. Someone loves you. Do you have questions, Olivia?
Yes, there are more questions here. That was actually one of them. So thank you for asking it, Nicole, and thank you for answering, Levi. Where did you essentially find that strength, and all of that planning is super important, and finding, the little things as well. So thank you for sharing that. We have a couple of questions for Andrew. So one of them here asks, what did it feel like to write that letter to your family when you were coming out as trans?
So that whole letter story was actually pretty crazy, because again, like I had no idea what I was doing. Like I knew I wanted to transition, and like my family is very close, so every get together, anything that we can get together for, we were gonna get together for. So I knew I had to at some point kind of like be honest with them. But I knew that being 7-day Adventist and like my family's from Jamaica, I was like, nah, this is not gonna fly with them. Like definitely not. And it was hard. And the thing is, like, I never gave that letter directly to my mom. I was kind of those things where I wrote the letter and I put it in her jewelry box, and my mom never goes in her jewelry box unless she's going somewhere fancy, which it's very rare that she's gonna go in there. So it was just me trying to get it out there, but I still didn't really want her to read it. And it wasn't really like an outing, but my wife was the one who kind of like was like, yo, I think you need to go check your jewelry box for something. Because it was something that it was weighing on me, like not being able to talk to my family and be me around my family because of wanting to transition. So it was hard, but I knew I had to get it done. And I kind of just came to realization that it's either they're gonna love me or they're not. And either way, like my life still has to move on with or without them. And like, I was just honestly blessed to still have them with me in my corner.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that kind of ties into the second piece here, the second sort of question. And it asks, what did it feel like to have that, unconditional love and support from your family? I imagine it was a big relief for you. I know you weren't kind of expecting that. So what did that feel like?
I definitely wasn't expecting it because, again, like a lot of my friendships really failed throughout. I had a lot of people tell me I was going to go to hell, that I was going to be nothing. And it actually made me kind of move out of Toronto. So I had left Toronto to kind of focus on my transition and kind of stay away from everybody. So I'm 28 now. I've been transitioning for 3 years come August. August makes 3 years on T, and like I feel a lot better having my family, because to be honest, like I don't have friends, and I'm like that because like I know how many friendships have failed only because I was honest with them about who I was. So having my family kind of is just like all I need. Whoever comes along and rocks with me, hey, hi, I'm here. But it took a lot. It took a lot even to start telling my story. So this is actually like the third time I've actually started to tell my story to people. So.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. I put it in the chat earlier, but Levi said something as well. I'd rather be loved for who I am than for who people want me to be. That was very powerful. Thank you for that. I think, do we have time for one more question, Nicole? Is that okay?
Yeah, we definitely do.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 more questions, so we're good.
Perfect, perfect. So this one I think is just in general for whoever wants to answer. It asks, I'd like to talk to someone who is queer and learn about their experiences. I want to show them that I support them. How do I bring up a conversation about someone's queerness without offending them?
So I think I'd love to hear from everyone. I think we're all like, I think what comes to mind for this person is clearly they're trying to get across sincerity, right? Like they want to learn more, to do better. And so that's important, right? But I think that if you want to learn about queer people and their experiences, that you should start with your own research first, because then what happens is inadvertently, you were then kind of using the queer people in your life or that you were in contact with, like as your learning guide. And the queer people in our lives are our friends and our family, right? And so it's okay to have conversations with them, of course, and to ask them questions. But if your goal is specifically to learn more about queer lives or to show support to queer people, then you can first start that journey on your own and making sure that if you want, you can look up online resources, follow queer and trans affirming accounts, really like get your bases covered in terms of your foundational education, take a workshop, ask your employers to cover workshops if that's something they're able to do, and really take that learning into your own hands. And then perhaps moving on to supporting in physical ways, like donating your money, donating your time, things of that nature to queer people, to trans people, to gender diverse people. So I think to answer your question, you don't ask a queer person about their identity to further your education. You research that first. And if you find yourself in conversation or community with the queer person and it comes up naturally, then for sure talk about it if that's the type of conversation you're having. But we want to be mindful that, especially for those of us that are cisgendered, that we're not like centering ourselves in our exploration to learn more and therefore treating people kind of like are like living resources or living guidebooks. Like that's not cool either. That's just another form of asking for labor from queer and trans people without compensating like spiritually or with money, right? And so yeah, I hope that's a good starting point.
Thank you. That was very informative. Thank you, Chloe. Does anybody want to piggyback off of that or have a different answer or similar answer, anything like that?
I also want to just say, this is totally just off the tone of the question, but I would say forgive yourself. And the reason why I'm saying that is because like it feels like I'm hearing a sense of urgency in your voice, like, oh my God, how to support the queer people. Oh my God, like, like as if you missed time, you know what I mean? Like as if you missed a moment to support them earlier. And like, we don't really care. Like, it's not that deep. It's okay. Like, we're all discovering and we're all like figuring it out. We're all trying. Like I mentioned earlier, I didn't mention earlier, LOL. But like me as a trans person, like I still struggle with transphobia, and not struggle. That's the wrong word. I still am transphobic in some ways as well. There's still parts of me that are still very much like, oh my God, still like rediscovering and all that stuff. Like we all have our stuff like that we're dealing with, right? Like no one is saying because we're queer, we're perfect. That doesn't make any sense. I know a bunch of gay guys who are anti-trans, which I'm like, but we're in the same community, so it's fine. But anyways, like at the end of the day, like it's true. And so I just want to say, forgive yourself, like let it go. It's okay. Like we're not in like desperate need. Like we're not in like such a deficit where it's like everybody has to rally around, even though simultaneously like we are in some ways. I just want to say like, just free yourself of that need to like be the savior. You don't have to do that. Like, you don't have to save us for anything, because we're not dying. Like, we're living. Like, that is the whole premise and the foundation of our community is life. And even though we talk about the trans deaths and we talk about, the awful things that happen to, bisexual folks and the erasure of bisexuality, and we talk about all these things, but like, we're not dying. Like, at the core of it, we're actually living. And you should come to Pride, dude. We're lit. Like, it's a movie. So like, we're alive. So I just want to say, yeah, free yourself from the need to save people, and just treat people like you normally would. It's just another Tuesday afternoon. Hey, I'm trans. Anyways, what's on TV? Like, it's not that deep. Like, it's very much the same thing. It's just, you know what I mean? So if you want to learn stuff, just, you know what I mean? Like, again, it's cool to have the casual convos, whatever, but I really want to add to what Chloe was saying and say the start, in my opinion, would be to forgive yourself and then let go of that need to be a savior, and then Google stuff and then carry on from there. And that's exactly what I would say.
Thank you, Levi. I know that we're getting to our time of close, and I just wanted to give some time for healing. And I know that Elizabeth shared a beautiful piece with us, artistic piece, and Chloe's also in the healing profession as well. So I guess as we wrap up, what are your thoughts about artistic expression, healing? What are some suggestions or methods that you can give us as we're closing out today of our first day of celebration?
That's such a beautiful note to end on. I know I've definitely come to like poetry and art as a space of like processing and trying to heal and just trying to like work through my feelings. I think it's just really important to like allow yourself that space, and to actually like give yourself permission to like write the thing, make the thing, do the thing. Levi's also a musician too. So it's like we're out here just like doing the thing and like allowing ourselves to create it first for ourselves, I think is really important. But also in general, I think like there's just like give yourself space to like process things, and to like genuinely make space for yourself. I don't know how else to sort of articulate that, but I do feel like we're in this time where we're like trying to like fill our schedules with like a million things, and there's about to be this like reopening, but like I think we just need to find time to like ground ourselves, and then also like think about how we want to move with intention and what we really care about, and who we really care about and want to fill that space. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with Elizabeth. I think that for those that are in the creative and the healing arts and whatever points that those intersect, that like a bunch of things this year, like obviously COVID, and all the like trickle downs that affected us at like a social level, at like a nervous system level, and just to really free ourselves as much as we can from the rigidity that says you have to. If your wellness is I have to get up and I have to do this and I have to do that, just really release yourself from the rigidity of it, because you're really sneaking in the back door of that type of like harmful thinking where you're super militant with yourself and there's no room. And as much room as possible is what we should be giving ourselves in every sense. So I totally agree. Grounding in what way makes sense for you, understanding that you don't have to be married to any specific spiritual or wellness practices or artistic practices. You can dip in and out. You can try again. You can stop. You can restart. That a part of the journey and a part of the practice is kind of just like flowing and just like going with it. And like, we're fresh off the clip season. It's tough out here, so we don't have to make things harder for ourselves by making our wellness or our spiritual practices into such a difficult chore. Like, it can actually be easy and it can feel good, and we can work within that, and we can still have discipline within that as well. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. So beautiful. DeAndrew, Levi, thoughts about creativity, healing, spirituality?
I think everyone said it. Just be you. Give yourself that permission to be yourself. Create space where there wasn't a space for you before. You're allowed to exist. You're allowed to feel. So just be you. They're gonna hate you anyway, no matter what you're doing. So just be you. They'll adjust. I promise you. Do you? They'll just adjust.
Yeah, and I would say just finally, like, that's literally like my affirmation is like, I give myself permission to live my best life. That's literally it. Like, just freeing myself from, the chains of like, have to. It's so funny that you say that, Chloe, because that's literally what I've been doing in my own life is like freeing myself from the have to's, and like, you don't have to do anything. Like, you just live your life, live it. Okay, like however you want to. Like people who want to be like, oh, I want to journal 7 times a day and like burn sage 12 times an hour and you know what I'm saying, and do 80 forms of yoga today. Like, okay, like even the day has limits. Okay, like just chill. Okay, like it's not day forever. Like we're not in Alaska. Like it's not forever day. Like go to bed. Are you not tired? Are you not hungry? Like get a snack. Like drink some water. Like you don't have to use lemon. Like not every day is a detox. Jesus Christ, just drink some juice. Have some fun. Like y'all, like sometimes you make healing such a chore and it's like no one wants to go to therapy because we're all like, we're gonna have to do 12 steps. Like just not to make fun of that. That's not what I mean. But I mean, like, you know what I mean? In general, like you don't have to do that. You can just like you live. Okay. It's my advice about being creative is live and go to bed.
We're all dying of laughter and we don't know what to say next. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
So as I'm trying to get over my laughing, so once again, this was an amazing presentation for our first day of our LGBTQ2si plus, sorry. And I just want to thank once again our presenters. I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank our participants that joined us on this evening. And I hope that you were able to take something away from today. And don't forget, we do have day 2 on Thursday, June the 24th at 7 o'clock, where we will have more presenters and entertainment, a little bit of entertainment also. So join us and don't forget to get your ticket at Eventbrite at kajengawellness.com.